Ella!
Hi. That's the microphone. I'm going to work on it.
Turn it on.
Oh, I got to turn it on.
He always turns it off.
Step one.
Can you hear me?
Keep it close.
Keep it close.
That's his
Right here.
That's what she said.
That's what she said. White trash is a complicated word.
Gerald Thomason.
Boom. You nailed it. Growing up, Mother used it to describe people, behaviors, food, clothes, the appropriate time between baths, teeth, tattoos, piercings, and anything else she found unbecoming. It's a handy catch-all, and it taught me some boundaries I did not want to cross. Of course, being trashy has no color lines. Anyone of any race can be trashy. But in my house, white trash had a very specific meaning, and it was not a compliment. I was forced to rethink and deepen my prejudice while working at a residential treatment facility for juvenile sex offenders. Every morning, the treatment team met to discuss the shenanigans that had occurred in the hospital the night before. We would also decide how to address behavior problems. On this particular morning, we were discussing one child's refusal to change his sheets. I considered myself to be an expert in these matters, and I spoke up. In his house, they probably wait for the mites to carry away the sheets before they decide to change them. I then cited a case involving my father, who, according to my mother, is part white trash. And I told them, my dad and his roommates threw away real dishes in garbage bags, and they threw them in the basement. When all the bags in the basement created a trash monster and charged the basement door, they would run away and rent somewhere else. So, to put it clinically, this kid is just plain white trash. I waited for them to suggest that I become a psychiatrist because my diagnostic skills were clearly on point. No one was impressed, and one particular, very sensitive therapist was offended. He told me I was an elitist, and perhaps I should think about using the term rural poor. I shook my head, and I dug in deeper. No. You do not need to be rural or poor to be white trash. Just look at Kid Rock. My coworkers dismissed me, and they moved on to other kids. But I did not like having my stereotype flipped on its head by his stereotype. My dedication to clumping a group of people under one Leonard Skinner listening, taxidermy loving, Civil War reenacting, moon pie eating umbrella deepened. And 6 months later, I got exactly what I deserved. Camping kind of disagrees with me. I do not like being cold, and I hate being hot. Climate control is something that I do not take for granted. I will not eat canned meat, not tuna, not sardines, not chicken, not Spam. I require several pillows to sleep at night so my delicate spine does not go out of whack. And if I sound like a high-maintenance asshole to you, you should meet Mother, who has not slept on a thread count under 800 since the 70s. As a newlywed, I didn't know all of this about myself. My husband Ezra and I needed an affordable anniversary getaway, and we decided to go camping. I was in charge of picking the place. I grew up in this state. I know who goes into the wilderness on the weekends, and they are people who want to avoid law enforcement, enjoy setting things on fire, and are often armed. Of course, there are peaceful nature lovers at every Arkansas campsite, but the exception proves the rule. I was looking for something secluded. Ezra and I were both getting impatient as we toured our third hour of Crawford County looking for somewhere to camp. Finally, we found it. Just past the river, over a low-water bridge and up a steep hill, was a precious little site in the very back that had gone unclaimed. I moved food bags around and looked busy while he set up the tent. In my experience, making something that lives in a bag into a dwelling should be left to engineers. No thanks to me. We were relaxing with a beer an hour after we got there, which gave me time to speculate about our neighbors who seemed very suspicious to me. Well, there's 500 Bud Light cans outside of their tent. Maybe they're college kids? But there's only one little truck. Ezra was ignoring me, but I kept at it. They could have 2 vehicles. I mean, really, there has to be a lot of people over there. Look at all those cans. He did not look, and I was about to give it up when they crested the hill. I kicked Ezra under the table. Here they come. We watched as an older man with a ponytail and a bald head walked to the tent with a younger woman whose blonde hair was cut in a short pixie. They were both wearing jean shorts and carrying Bud Lights. Ezra looked up from his book to have a look. Cute. Then he went back to reading. They stayed in their tent for several hours while we enjoyed anniversary hot dogs. And no, I cannot explain romance. I cannot explain how I can shit on canned meat and then go and put a hot dog in my face. But I did. We were about to get serious about drinking our beer when there was a commotion down by the river. After some yelling, a white truck jacked up on giant wheels came tearing up the hill, and a young gentleman with a shaved head and a sleeveless shirt was driving this, and he was screaming as he drove. That's right, motherfuckers, I own this campsite. He did some donuts in the gravel, and Ezra and I exchanged glances, but we did not need to speak. A challenge had been presented to our fellow campers down by the river, and they would meet it. A different man wearing jean shorts appeared from the woods and raised his fist at the truck. Hey, fuck you. There's kids around here, slow the fuck down. Thank God someone was thinking of the children, because I was not. I looked at Ezra like Christmas had come early. I am a child of a rural bus route, and I love fights. I love them. Nothing passes the time like a good scuffle, especially when I'm not involved and I get to decide who I think should win based on the issues at hand. I'm rooting for the guy in the woods. I looked at Ezra solemnly. I mean, he has a really good point about the kids. The guy in the truck was not intimidated. Oh yeah, motherfucker? Well, my dog could kick your dog's ass. This was a dark turn. I will watch people punch each other in the face all day long. I cannot stomach a dog fight. And this would be especially brutal because the co-captain of the white truck was a giant pit bull. I started to panic as the man in the woods considered his options. This ain't about dogs, man. Just stop driving so fast. I got kids. I was so proud of him. This man was a peacemaker of the highest order. I would have gone to shake his hand and thank him for ending the violence, but I really cannot be complicit in the wearing of jean shorts. It is wrong, and I will not be a part of it.
Fair enough.
The 2 men exchanged words we could not hear, and the truck drove away. Ezra, it's about to get serious. I bet that guy's a local, and he's about to get all his friends. But he disagreed. No, they'll probably end up hanging out. And they did. He returned 20 minutes later with Walmart bags of food, and he never left. I told Ezra how much I hated it when he was right while we unfolded our chairs and watched our neighbors while we drank our beers. They were about to build a fire, and the man had drug up what looked to be 2 trees and laid them across his fire pit. I shook my head at Ezra. No kindling, no paper, just a couple of trees, and he thinks if he lights a match, he'll have a fire? I don't think so. Ezra sipped his beer smugly. They'll use gasoline. No, that's cheating. Come on, he's gonna dump gas on a few tree limbs and call it a fire? That's cheating. This was starting to really piss me off. I was the one raised by a hillbilly who hands guns to children, not him. Did he know what squirrel tasted like? No. These were my people. I should be able to predict them better than him. Just then, our male neighbor pulled a red container of gasoline out of the back of his truck, and I began to whine. I mean, there's a proper way to build a fire, and it's not with gasoline, right? Ezra was tiring of my obsession with the neighbor's fire. What do you care? If they want to start their fire with gasoline, what's it to you? I care about forest fires. It's really dangerous. I was not convincing, so he pounced. Oh, is Smokey the Bear mad? Did they teach you how to build a little fire the one year you were a Girl Scout, now you're a park ranger? I was about to launch into all the reasons I had to deprive the Girl Scouts of my membership after the first year when we heard someone approaching. It was now dark and we had not seen our ponytailed neighbor coming over to make our acquaintance. I wanted none of it. Luckily, he wasn't talking to me, he was talking to Ezra. Hey y'all, we got a fire going on over here. Just wondering if you want to come over and have a few beers. Yeah, I saw your fire, you jean short wearing cheater. But I stayed quiet. Ezra was polite. No, it's okay, it's our anniversary. I think we're just gonna hang out over here. This did not go over well. Come on, man, we're gonna party. What? You too good for our fire? And there it was. We could either join our neighbors or possibly have all the river people find out that we thought we were special and they could turn on us. Let me preface this by saying that none of what follows would have happened if I had stayed quiet. Ezra would have gotten rid of him peacefully, and we would have gone to bed, and there would not have been a story. But no. Somebody can't handle peer pressure properly, so I said, okay, and nodded enthusiastically to Ezra. He followed reluctantly because even though I was ruining our anniversary, we couldn't split up. The ponytailed neighbor's name was Philip, and his girlfriend's name was Teresa, pronounced Teresa. She was chasing Hot Damn with Bud Light. She offered me some Hot Damn, and I accepted. Hot Damn is a cinnamon schnapps that I have drunk on exactly 3 occasions. They include a party in the 11th grade, a work trip to Waynesville, Missouri, and this camping trip. This makes Hot Damn, not me, responsible for a 2-month relationship with a guy whose favorite band was Ugly Kid Joe, a trip to a strip club to see a stripper aptly named Roadkill, and exposing myself and Ezra to this campsite. Hot Damn is bad news. We pulled up our camping chairs, and they told us they were on hiatus from their troubles. Things had been rough for the past few months. Initially, Ezra and I were pounding our beers, hopefully having an excuse to go back to our tent. But soon, a spell had been cast, and we found ourselves separated across the campfire, listening to 2 versions of the most ridiculous story that I had ever heard in my life. I sat with Teresa, who was about 35 and would have been attractive, but substance abuse and anger had taken their toll. I studied her while we cozied up next to the fire. She really was very cute. She was short, and she had this cute little dyed blonde pixie. She was very petite. She looked like a drug-addled Tinkerbell. I was curious how an old man with a skullet had caught her eye, and I intended to get to the bottom of this, but first we had to make introductions. When strangers find out that you work in mental health, they immediately begin a therapy session, and Teresa was no exception. So are you a doctor or something? No, I just supervise the kids while they're in treatment, kind of like a babysitter. I hope my kids don't end up in a place like that. If they do, it'll be their fucking dad's fault. She then launched into the morning she lost custody of her children. According to her, the school bus pulled away just as she got out of bed. Her two children, a 10-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl, were irritated with her not having her shit together. But she really couldn't address their concerns until she had a Bud Light. She looked at me earnestly and explained, "You see, my brother's a doctor, and he told me I have persistent panic disorder. There are pills you can take, but the only thing that works for me is Bud Light." As a fellow self-medicator, I consider this. I had 2 problems with her story so far. Persistent panic disorder, or PPD, is not a recognized psychiatric disorder. I suspected her brother was not a doctor. Also, needing Bud Lights to start your day is a symptom of alcoholism, not a treatment for PPD or any other disorder that I am aware of, but I kept my mouth shut because I love a good story. After downing some Bud Lights, she tried to help the kids get to school. Their phone was disconnected, so she sent her son down the road to her mama's house to ask to borrow the car. I assumed we were heading toward a morning Dewey story, but things went a different way. Her son, who is clearly a traitor, went to Mama's house, but then decided to call his dad. Dad's phone was connected, he had a car, and he left to come take them to school immediately. The stress of his impending arrival drove Teresa to finish all of her Bud Lights. And now she had 2 problems. Her PPD would go unmedicated until she got to the liquor store, and her stupid ex-husband had arrived and was calling her an unfit mother. This, she told me, was bullshit. He knew she had PPD, and he knew she had to treat it. It was cruel of him to use it against her, but that's exactly what he did. And 1 month later, she found herself in court fighting for custody for her children. It was not her fault, she told the judge, that she did not have a lawyer. Actually, it was his fault. She looked at me in a full rage as she described the scene in the courtroom. "I told him he was supposed to appoint me a lawyer. I seen it on TV. And do you know what he said to me?" I shook my head because I could not imagine. He looked around and he said, "Lady, do you see any extra lawyers in here?" I made a face of disbelief because I was not about to get on the wrong side of Teresa's rage. So I told him, "Fine, I'll be my own lawyer. I know what the truth is." Teresa was relieved of her duties as custodian of her children. But there was a silver lining. She soon met Philip. He understood her PPD and kept her plied with Bud Light and distracted her from her sadness by coming up with fun outings for the kids to do on the weekends when they visited. During one of these outings, they decided to teach the kids the art of shooting a road sign from a moving vehicle. It is not uncommon in Arkansas to see road signs indented with buckshot. Teresa and Philip were honoring this tradition when tragedy struck. At this point, Philip became distressed from across the campfire. "Baby, what are you talking about over there?" Teresa hesitated. "She asked me about my eye, Philip." I had done no such thing. But now that she mentioned it, one of her eyes looked really weird. "Well, you don't have to tell her, baby." Philip was really starting to piss me off. No one had invited him into this conversation. Ezra saved the day with a challenge. "Well, what, is it some kind of secret?" Teresa looked at Philip. "Should I tell him, baby?" He sighed with resignation. "Go on. Tell him, baby." Thank God he had signed off on this because I was now dying to know what had happened to Teresa's eye. She pointed at him and she shouted, "He shot me in my eye!" We sat in silence until Philip popped out of his seat and rushed to quiet Teresa, who was now sobbing. "Baby, no, don't cry. I didn't mean to. It was an accident. It was a ricochet." Teresa pointed a finger at her eye. "You shot me. You know you did." They went back and forth like this for a few minutes, and then things got weird. He kissed her tears away, and then they began a half-hearted makeout session, and I found their behavior really disturbing. I was just inches away. Just as I was about to run back to my tent screaming, Teresa jumped out of her chair and began running around the fire, screaming, "Woo-hoo!" over and over. And in between woohoos, she would focus her one working eye on Philip and dance provocatively for him. I was so uncomfortable, I had to distract her. I patted the seat next to me and invited her to sit. It occurred to me during the striptease that we had some common ground. As a child, my dad shot a BB gun at a shotgun shell he had lodged in a fence and was rewarded for this ingenuity when the shell's primer fired back and lodged in his eye. Even when his face swelled up to twice its original size, XXL, he refused to admit to my pappy what he had done. The truth might get his gun taken away, and he would rather die. Fortunately, an X-ray revealed the culprit, and his head was back to its normal but unusually large size in no time. See, I told Teresa, this kind of thing happens all the time. She told us she also went to the hospital and had surgery, but then the hospital had the gall to ask for money in return for fixing her eye, and that was why she and Philip were on this trip. They were escaping the relentless calls of bill collectors. This made them sad, and pretty soon they were petting and groping again. When Teresa began vomiting, Ezra and I took the opportunity to make our exit. Philip was having none of it. "No, hey, there's still beer to drink, y'all. She'll be okay." This was probably true. I believe that Teresa was capable of the elusive puke and rally. We compromised with a promise to return in the morning for bacon. At sunrise, Ezra and I peeked out of our tent and saw no movement from our neighbors. We packed our belongings and sped away as quickly as possible. Normally, no level of threat or fear of personal safety could keep me from bacon. I could be lured into a van with curtains and the absolute promise of an abduction if the owner was cooking bacon inside the van. But the thought of seeing Philip make out with Teresa's puke-encrusted mouth first thing in the morning ruined my chances to have bacon with my hangover, and for that, I will never forgive them. Woo!